Before we get in the video, could everyone please subscribe to my HOA Karen Tales channel? Thank you so much. I was enjoying a quiet morning coffee on my porch when I saw it. A crisp white envelope in my mailbox stamped with the HOA's official seal. That was never a good sign. My first instinct was to toss it straight into the trash, but curiosity got the better of me. I tore it open, scanned the letter, and nearly spit out my coffee. Dear homeowner, your private road is now designated as a community access route for the benefit of all residents in the HOA jurisdiction. Please remove any personal barriers or signs restricting usage effective immediately. I had to read it twice because I was sure my brain had short-circuited. My road, the one I built, the one I maintained, repaired, and spent thousands of dollars on. How in the world had it suddenly become community property? I let out a humorless laugh. The HOA had always been ridiculous, but this was straight-up robbery with a fancy letterhead. I walked out to my driveway, looking down at the very road in question. It was a simple, well-maintained strip of asphalt leading from my house to the main neighborhood road. While I bought this land years ago, there was no proper connection to the main road, just a dirt path. I paid for everything myself. The permits, the paving, the drainage. The HOA had nothing to do with it. But now, out of nowhere, they had decided it was theirs. Before reacting, I did what any reasonable person would do. I called up the HOA office. The woman who answered had the robotic politeness of someone who had long since stopped caring about life. Thank you for calling the Homeowners Association. How may I assist you? Yeah, I just got a letter saying you guys decided to take my private road. Funny joke, but I'm going to need a real explanation. There was a brief pause. Then she sighed like I was the 100th person to complain that day. That's not a joke, sir. According to recent HOA discussions, it has been determined that the road leading to your residence is a crucial access point for the neighborhood and should be open to all residents. I chuckled. Except it's my road. I paid for it. The HOA has never contributed a cent. So what gives? It was discussed and voted on in the last HOA meeting, which I wasn't even invited to. Attendance is optional, sir. Great. So, I missed the moment you all decided to steal my property. Can't wait for next month's meeting. Maybe you guys will vote to take my house too. Sir, she said, her voice strained. If you have concerns, you're welcome to bring them up at the next meeting. I hung up before I said something that would get me fined. It didn't take long before I noticed the first signs of their little power trip. By the next day, they had installed a sign at the entrance to my road. Community Access Road. No blocking, in bright, official-looking letters. I stood there staring at it, wondering if I had somehow stumbled into a parallel universe where property laws didn't exist. Then came the foot traffic. I started seeing neighbors I had spoken to before, casually strolling down my driveway like they were on a scenic park trail. A woman pushing a baby stroller gave me a friendly nod, as if she was on a morning walk in a public park. Next, the delivery truck started coming through. Amazon, FedEx, even a mailman started cutting through my property because the HOA told them it was a faster route. At one point, I looked outside and saw some random guy in gym clothes jogging up my driveway. I flagged him down. Excuse me, what are you doing? Oh, hey, he said, barely stopping. The HOA said this is a public access road now. It's way easier than taking the main road. My jaw clenched so tight, I thought my teeth might crack. The last straw came when a group of HOA members had the audacity to hold a small meeting at the end of my driveway, complete with fold-out chairs and clipboards. They sat there sipping their iced coffees, discussing future HOA plans as if they were in a conference room and not trespassing on my property. I stepped outside, arms crossed. Do you people have brain damage, or is it just selective stupidity? The HOA president, a smug, groomed man named Greg, looked up with a thin smile. Oh, hello. We were just discussing upcoming community improvements. You're welcome to join. You mean discussing how you can steal more of my property? Greg's smile never wavered. It's all for the betterment of the community. We want a more unified neighborhood, and opening access routes like yours makes things easier for everyone. Oh well, as long as it's easier for everyone else, who cares about my property rights? Exactly. I'm glad you understand. I took a deep breath, forcing a smile. Okay, Greg, you want my road to be community property? Fine, but you better be prepared for what comes next. His face twitched just slightly at my tone, but he kept his smug expression. That sounds like a threat. I chuckled darkly. No, Greg, it's a promise. And just like that, war was declared. The next morning, I woke up to find my private road looking like a government project. The HOA had wasted no time flexing their SoCal authority. They had installed official-looking road signs at both entrances, one that read community access, do not block, and another that said speed limit 15 miles per hour, as if they suddenly had jurisdiction over my land. I had barely stepped outside when I noticed two HOA board members standing by one of the signs, admiring their work like they had just erected the Eiffel Tower. One of them, a woman named Linda, turned to me with a fake smile. Good morning. What do you think? We had these installed last night to make sure people understand this is now a shared community road. I stared at her, then at the signs. You put up speed limit signs on my property? Yes, for safety reasons. We wouldn't want any accidents now, would we? I rubbed my temple, feeling my blood pressure spike. Linda, let me ask you something. If I put a no trespassing sign on your driveway, would you respect it? Ink taken aback. Well, of course that would be my property, right? So why the hell do you think I'd respect a sign you put on my property when I never agreed to this? Before she could answer, Greg, the HOA president, strolled up with his signature smug grin. Good morning. I see you've noticed the new community enhancements. I exhaled sharply. Greg, get off my land. He chuckled, ignoring my anger. Now, let's not be hostile. We're all neighbors here, and we're simply making necessary improvements. I crossed my arms, claiming my private road as community property. Exactly, Greg said cheerfully. It's in everyone's best interest. For who? Certainly not me. Well, it's about fostering harmony. You see, the HOA has decided. There's that magic word again I cut in. Decided? Like you guys are some kind of government? Well, newsflash, Greg, you don't get to decide what happens to my land. Greg sighed dramatically, like he was dealing with an unruly child. Look, you have to understand that this road is a crucial pathway. The board took a vote, and the majority agreed it should be open to all residents. I snorted. Oh, great. Well, I took a vote too, and 100% of me says you can go to hell. Greg's smirk faltered for half a second before he composed himself. I understand your frustration, but the decision has already been made. Now, if you'd like, you can always bring your concerns to the next HOA meeting. Let me save you the trouble, I said, stepping closer. I don't care about your meetings. I don't recognize your authority over my road. And if I see one more sign, speed bump, or improvement, I will personally remove it with a flamethrower if necessary. Greg's smile stiffened. Well, that would be against community guidelines. I stepped even closer. Greg, buddy, I am not in your damn community. He opened his mouth, but before he could argue further, I pulled out my phone and started recording. Go ahead, I said, holding up the camera. Explain on the record how the HOA thinks it can claim private property without any legal backing. Greg immediately turned and walked away. Linda fumbled for words before awkwardly following him. By that afternoon, things escalated. The HOA sent an official notice demanding that I remove the gate I had installed years ago to restrict access to my road. According to their letter, my gate was hindering community flow and creating a barrier to neighborhood unity. I laughed out loud reading it. They wanted me to remove my own gate on my own land to make their lives easier. I grabbed a thick marker and scrawled a response across the notice. And, for good measure, I taped it to the very gate they wanted me to remove. It wasn't long before Nosy Nancy, the neighborhood's self-appointed HOA enforcer, came storming up my driveway with her phone out, recording me like she was about to uncover the next big scandal. Excuse me, but you can't just ignore an official HOA directive, she snapped. I turned to her with the calmest expression I could manage. Would you like to tell me exactly where in the HOA bylaws it states that you can claim privately owned land? She faltered. Well, it's about community harmony. That's not a law, Nancy. Well, we voted. Nancy, I'm going to ask you one last time. Do you own this road? She pursed her lips, clearly searching for a way to argue. Did you pay a single penny to build this road? I continued. She shifted uncomfortably. Well, no. But then get off my property before I start charging you for standing here. She gasped like I'd slapped her and stormed off, muttering something about how rude I was. But the HOA wasn't done yet. 2 days later, I caught a construction crew trying to repave a section of my road. They had equipment, cones, even a damn work crew. I pulled up my truck, rolled down the window, and asked the lead worker what the hell was going on. "We're here on HOA orders to repave this community access road," he said. I gave him the best deadpan look I could muster. "Community access road?" "Yep, they said it was part of the neighborhood and needed maintenance." I took a deep breath. "Did the HOA pay you for this job?" "Yeah, they said the funds came for neighborhood dues." I grinned. "Well, they lied to you. This road, it's mine. They don't own it, they don't control it, and you do not have permission to touch it." The worker hesitated, glancing at his crew. "Ah, so what do you want us to do?" I smiled. "Pack up, and if the HOA has a problem, tell them they can expect a lawsuit." The crew left without another word. By nightfall, I knew one thing for certain. If the HOA thought they could bully me into submission, they had seriously underestimated who they were dealing with. The next morning, I decided it was time to stop playing defense. The HOA had been throwing punches, but now it was my turn to hit back, and I planned to do it in the most obnoxiously legal way possible. First, I called up a lawyer, a guy named Charlie who had a reputation for tearing apart HOA nonsense like a dog with a chew toy. I explained the situation to him over the phone, and he let out a long whistle. "Wow," he said, "that's a special kind of stupid. They're trying to claim your private road without purchasing it, without legal documentation, and using HOA rules that don't even apply to you?" "Pretty much." "Well, congratulations," Charlie said cheerfully. "You have the easiest case in the world. Send me the paperwork, and I'll draft a cease and desist letter so aggressive it'll make their head spin." While Charlie handled the legal side, I decided to make life as inconvenient as possible for the HOA in the meantime. If they wanted my road so badly, they were going to pay for it, literally. The first thing I did was put up a massive sign right at the entrance to my road: "Private property. Trespassers will be charged a $10 entry fee. HOA members pay double." I even threw in a little asterisk at the bottom that read, "Violators subject to creative consequences." Within hours, the HOA board was already in an uproar. Greg, the highway president, stormed down my driveway, flanked by Linda and Nosy Nancy. "You can't charge people to use this road." Greg fumed, waving his arms like a lunatic. I leaned against my truck, sipping a soda. "Why not? It's my road. Remember, this is ridiculous." Linda huffed. "You can't just charge neighbors to use a road that belongs to the community." I smiled. "Ah, see, that's where you're wrong. The road doesn't belong to the community. It belongs to me. And if people want to use something I own, they can pay for the privilege." "This is an abuse of power," Nancy shrieked, her face turning red. "Oh, you mean like how you guys try to steal my property? Yeah, it sucks when the shoe is on the other foot, doesn't it?" Greg glared at me, trying to keep his composure. "This won't hold up in an HOA hearing." I let out a bark of laughter. "Greg, I don't give a single damn about your HOA hearings. I'm not even in the HOA. You might as well hold a meeting about how much you all hate Mondays. It's just as meaningless." That shut him up for a moment, but things got even better when delivery companies started following the rules. I had made sure to contact UPS, FedEx, and Amazon, informing them that my road was private and that entry required payment. The first time a FedEx truck stopped at the entrance, the driver actually got out and knocked on Greg's door. "Hey, you're part of the HOA, right?" the driver asked, holding up a package. Greg, still fuming from earlier, nodded. "Well, this road's private now," the driver said, pointing to my sign. "You gotta pay if you want your deliveries." Greg's face turned purple. He stormed back down my driveway later that day, absolutely livid. "You can't block deliveries. That's interfering with essential services." "Oh, don't worry," I said, barely hiding my grin. "I'm not blocking anything. The drivers just don't want to pay the highway surcharge." Greg gritted his teeth. "This is extortion." I shrugged. "No, Greg, this is capitalism." A few days later, the HOA made its next desperate move. They tried to file an official complaint with the city, claiming my road was a necessary public access point. They thought they were being clever. Unfortunately for them, I had done my homework. Before they even got a chance to plead their case, I had already filed a countercomplaint, complete with property records proving my ownership. Charlie, my lawyer, even threw in a nasty little surprise, a legal demand that the HOA reimburse me for damages and trespassing violations. The city official handling the case took one look at my airtight paperwork, listened to Greg ramble about community harmony, and promptly shut the highway down. This is a clear case of private ownership, the official said, shaking his head. The HOA has no authority here. Greg tried one last-ditch effort, but it's inconvenient for the neighborhood. The city official arched an eyebrow. Sir, I'm here to enforce property laws, not make your life easier. Greg left that meeting looking like he had swallowed a lemon. Meanwhile, the rest of the HOA members were starting to turn on him. Rumors started spreading that Greg had lied about his authority over my road. People were not happy that he had wasted HOA funds on fake improvements for a road that didn't even belong to them. At the next HOA meeting, several residents publicly called for Greg's removal as president. Apparently, the whole let's steal someone's private road idea hadn't gone over as well as he thought it would. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted to make sure they learned their lesson. So just to twist the knife a little deeper, I installed a brand new high-tech security gate at the entrance of my road. This time, it required an access code. Only a select few neighbors, people I actually liked, got the code. As for Greg and the rest of the HOA, well, they got to stand there fuming as they realized their little shortcut had just disappeared forever. I enjoyed every second of it. The HOA was officially in panic mode after their failed attempt to steal my road and the absolute humiliation at the city office. They were scrambling to regain control. The board members were under pressure from angry residents who were now questioning why their HOA fees were being wasted on pointless legal battles. But instead of backing off like any rational group would, they doubled down. Their first desperate move came in the form of another letter, this time with bold red letters at the top reading Final Warning, Non-Compliance Notice. I opened it while sipping my coffee, barely containing my amusement. According to this masterpiece of idiocy, I was now in violation of multiple HOA regulations, including obstructing community access, aka owning my own road, and failure to comply with maintenance standards because I refused to let them pave over my property. They also cited unauthorized construction of barriers, referring to my brand new security gate. At the bottom, they added a thinly veiled threat. Failure to comply will result in escalating fines and potential legal action. I actually laughed out loud. These people were truly insane. Greg must have really thought I was an idiot because he was threatening me with fines from an HOA I wasn't even a part of. It was like a random stranger sending me a bill for their groceries and expecting me to pay. I decided to handle this one personally. So I grabbed a bright red marker, wrote denied across the entire letter, stuffed it back into their official HOA envelope, and dropped it off at their office. But they weren't done yet. A couple of days later, I caught a group of members sneaking around my property at night. At first, I thought it was some kids messing around, but then I saw them trying to pry open my security gate. I stepped outside with a flashlight and shined it right on them. Well, I said, if it isn't my favorite group of trespassers. They all froze. One of them, an older man with a clipboard, stammered, we were just checking the structural integrity of this gate. I raised an eyebrow at 11 at night. We have to make sure all neighborhood structures meet community safety standards. Another woman blurted out. I smirked, interesting because I have 3 different security cameras that just recorded you trying to break into my property. The blood drained from their faces. I pulled out my phone and played back the footage right in front of them. It showed them fumbling with the lock, trying to force it open. The HOA members started stammering excuses, but I wasn't having it. Let me explain something very clearly, I said, stepping closer. If any of you set foot on my property again, I'm filing a police report for criminal trespassing. We were just trespassing, one of them said. I cut them off, and if you don't leave in the next 10 seconds, I'm calling the cops. They scattered like cockroaches, but it got even worse for them. A few days later, I got an anonymous tip from one of my friendlier neighbors. Apparently, Greg and his HOA cronies had been dipping into HOA funds to finance their ridiculous war against me. All those fake road signs, unauthorized repaving attempts, legal fees, they weren't coming out of Greg's pocket. They were coming straight from the HOA budget. The rest of the neighborhood was just starting to realize it. Word got out fast. At the next HOA meeting, angry homeowners stormed in demanding answers. Greg tried to spin it as necessary expenses for community improvement, but nobody was buying it anymore. Homeowners started demanding an audit of the HOA's finances, and when the truth finally came out, Greg was exposed for mismanaging thousands of dollars of HOA funds. The fallout was glorious. People started calling for his resignation, and within a week, Greg was officially removed as HOA president. But the best part? The new acting board members sent me a letter, not to threaten me, but to apologize. They admitted the HOA had overstepped their bounds, assured me they would never try to claim my road again, and even offered to cover any legal fees I had incurred because of Greg's nonsense. I happily accepted, and just to rub salt in the wound, I kept my security gate up, ensuring that the HOA would never use my road again. Greg disappeared from the neighborhood shortly after his humiliating removal. And honestly, I hope every time he drives past my road, he remembers exactly who he messed with. Even after Greg's humiliating downfall and removal from the HOA board, I wasn't done. These people had spent months trying to steal my property, wasting my time, money, and patience. As much as I enjoyed watching Greg crash and burn, there was still one last thing left to do. Make sure they paid for it. Literally. My lawyer, Charlie, had been itching to go after them since day one, and now that the HOA had officially admitted they had overstepped their authority, we had everything we needed to drag them into court. So I did exactly that. The lawsuit was simple: trespassing, property damage from their failed paving attempt, and financial damages for their bogus legal threats. Highway lawsuits can drag out for months, but in this case, it was a bloodbath. We had video evidence of highway board members trespassing on my land, recordings of Greg admitting they had taken my road without legal grounds, and financial records proving they had misused HOA funds for their little war against me. Their new lawyer, who looked like he regretted taking the case, tried every possible argument. It was a misunderstanding. We thought we had the right to use the road. The former HOA president misled us. We just wanted what was best for the community. The judge wasn't buying any of it. Charlie, on the other hand, was having the time of his life tearing them apart. He brought up the bogus fines they had tried to charge me, the cease and desist letter we sent that they ignored, and most importantly, the financial records showing HOA money had been wasted on Greg's personal vendetta. When we played the security footage of HOA members sneaking onto my property at night, the entire courtroom erupted into whispers. The judge looked like she wanted to bang her gavel straight through Greg's forehead. "Let me get this straight," she said, rubbing her temples. "You attempted to seize a private road, fined the homeowner for refusing, trespassed on his property, and then tried to cover your tracks using HOA funds?" There was a long silence. Greg, who had been forced to testify despite no longer being HOA president, cleared his throat and mumbled, "Well, I wouldn't phrase it like that, Your Honor." The judge stared at him. "Then how would you phrase it?" Greg sat there looking like a deer in headlights. The HOA lawyer scrambled to do damage control. "Your Honor, the HOA board was simply acting under the impression that the road was part of the community's infrastructure." The judge cut him off. "Did the community pay for the road?" The lawyer hesitated. "Well, no, but did the community own the land?" Again, silence. The judge sighed, already over it. "The evidence is overwhelming. The HOA had no legal claim to the plaintiff's property, engaged in harassment, and misused funds. My ruling is in favor of the plaintiff." Boom! Just like that, I won. But the best part? The judge ordered the HOA to pay every single penny of my legal fees, plus additional damages for trespassing and harassment. And Greg, oh Greg, got a personal fine slapped on him for violating multiple state property laws. By the time we walked out of the courtroom, the HOA's finances were in tatters. Greg looked like he aged 10 years, and Charlie was grinning ear to ear. "Man," he said, patting me on the back, "that was fun. You should piss off HOAs more often. I laughed. Trust me, after this, I don't think they'll ever bother me again. And I was right because after that ruling, the HOA was officially scared of me. They didn't just stop trying to claim my road. They avoided me entirely, even the nosiest neighbors. Suddenly, I found myself very busy whenever I was outside. And Greg, well, rumor has it he tried to move to another HOA-controlled neighborhood. I can only hope they welcomed him the same way he welcomed me. The dust had finally settled, and I had won. The HOA had been publicly humiliated, Greg had been personally fined, and my private road was now more untouchable than ever. But the true joy of victory wasn't just in the courtroom ruling. It was in watching the absolute collapse of the HOA from the inside out. Word spread quickly about how badly they had lost, and suddenly homeowners started questioning everything. If the HOA had wasted all this time and money on a bogus lawsuit, what else had they screwed up? What other lies had they told? At the next HOA meeting, which I definitely attended just for the entertainment, the board tried to calm everyone down. Now let's not dwell on the past. Linda, the acting president, said nervously. We need to move forward as a community. A homeowner in the back stood up. Move forward? You just blew thousands of dollars in HOA funds on a lawsuit you couldn't win. And another homeowner chimed in. And you trespassed on his land. What the hell were you all thinking? The meeting descended into chaos. The new HOA leadership tried to control the situation, but they had lost all credibility. Nobody trusted them anymore. The homeowners started demanding transparency, audits, and even resignations. Then the biggest bombshell dropped. A former HOA board member, one who had quietly resigned during the lawsuit, stood up and said, "You should all check your HOA dues." There's been a lot of creative accounting over the years. That's when all hell broke loose. Homeowners started pulling out their phones, looking up their payments, and suddenly everyone realized their fees had been mysteriously increasing over the past few years. Greg, as it turned out, hadn't just been wasting money on legal fees. He had also been pocketing a little extra for himself. And just like that, the HOA completely collapsed. Homeowners voted to dissolve it entirely. No more HOA, no more stupid rules, no more fines over mailbox colors or trash cans being an inch too far from the curb. The neighborhood was finally free. As for me, I celebrated in style. The weekend after the HOA officially disbanded, I threw a massive block party right on the road they had tried to steal from me. I set up tables, fired up the grill, and invited the whole neighborhood. Well, almost everyone. Greg, Linda, and the other HOA board members were definitely not on the guest list. The best part? Greg actually showed up, standing awkwardly at the edge of the party, watching everyone celebrate like some kind of exiled dictator. I locked eyes with him, raised my drink, and gave him the biggest, most smug smile of my life. He turned around and walked away without saying a word. That was the last time I ever saw him. After the party, I kept the security gate up just as a reminder. Reminder to anyone who ever thought about trying to pull the same stunt. Honestly, nobody ever did. The neighborhood got better without the HOA. People worked together instead of against each other. As for me, I got to enjoy my road in peace. No fines, no rules, no Greg. And it was absolutely beautiful.